It begins on a night when the world feels like it's holding its breath. The kind of night where the air is too still, the stars seem far too faint, and the darkness between them feels heavier than it should. Highway 47 stretched out in both directions, like a black ribbon disappearing into the unknown, its faded white lines flashing beneath the beams of my headlights. I had been driving for hours, too many hours. The dashboard clock told me it was 2:13 a.m., but my body felt like it was somewhere between yesterday and tomorrow, the kind of fatigue where your eyes burn, your thoughts blur, and the only thing keeping you awake is the low hum of the engine and the hypnotic pattern of the road. I wasn't supposed to be on this stretch of highway at all. My route home from a work trip should have taken me south through the interstate, but a sudden accident had shut it down. A state trooper in a reflective vest had waved me toward the detour, a lonely two-lane road cutting through a part of the state I had never driven before. He'd said it would add maybe an hour to my trip. He didn't mention it would feel like driving into another world. There were no towns, no gas stations, no traffic, just long stretches of darkness, the occasional fence post, and fields that seemed to go on forever. The night pressed in from all sides. Even the moon had vanished behind a bank of clouds, leaving the land in a suffocating black. And then I saw her. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A shadow flickered at the edge of my headlights, just ahead on the right shoulder. My foot eased off the gas. She stepped into the light slowly, as though she wasn't entirely sure I was real. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. Her hair was long, dark and damp-looking, as if the night had wrapped itself around her. She wore a pale dress, not white exactly, but the washed-out color of something that had been through too many storms. She held one arm around herself, shivering, though the night wasn't especially cold. I slowed the car to a crawl, my instincts warring with common sense. Every urban survival warning I'd ever heard whispered in my head. Don't pick up strangers, especially not at night, especially not on empty highways. But there was something about her, something fragile, almost unreal, that pushed those warnings aside. She looked lost in a way that went deeper than just geography. When I rolled to a stop beside her, she didn't move. She just looked at me, her eyes wide and dark in the reflection of the headlights. "You need a ride?" I asked through the open passenger side window. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and stepped closer. The door handle clicked as she pulled it open. She slid into the seat with slow, deliberate movements, like someone careful not to wake a sleeping child. She didn't smell like perfume or sweat. She smelled faintly of rain-soaked earth. "Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the road. Her voice was soft. "Home." No address, no town name. Just that single word, spoken in a tone that carried both longing and dread. I didn't push her for details. Something told me I wouldn't get them anyway. We drove in silence for several minutes. She kept her gaze fixed on the window, though there was nothing to see but blackness beyond the glass. Occasionally the headlights would sweep over a fence or a gnarled tree, but otherwise, the world outside might as well have been a void. The quiet between us wasn't comfortable. It wasn't hostile either. It was heavy, like we were both waiting for something. I stole glances at her when I could. The dress she wore was out of place for the time of year, thin fabric, lace at the sleeves, old-fashioned, almost vintage. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, but every so often her fingers would twitch, like she was resisting the urge to reach for something that wasn't there. After a while, I asked,
For days after that night, I kept telling myself it was fatigue. Sleep deprivation plays cruel tricks on the mind. That's what I told myself when I remembered her voice, her eyes, the way her hair seemed to catch light that wasn't there. But there was one thing I couldn't explain away: the shawl. It lay folded in the corner of my trunk, like something that belonged to another era. Heavy woven fabric, hand-stitched patterns, edges frayed. No tag, no label. And when I touched it, a chill ran through my fingertips, as if I were pressing them against stone kept in deep shadow for a century. I decided to get rid of it. I drove 20 miles to a rest stop off the interstate, tossed it into a dumpster, and left without looking back. 2 mornings later, it was there again, draped neatly across the back seat of my car. I didn't even remember unlocking the doors. I didn't remember opening the back seat. But there it was. And it wasn't just there. It was damp again, as though it had been left out in the mist all night. That smell was stronger now. Rainwater, and something else. Something faintly metallic. That's when the dreams began. Every night, I found myself standing on the same stretch of Highway 47, the world around me soaked in silver moonlight. The road stretched out in both directions, but no matter which way I turned, it never ended. And always, I could hear footsteps behind me, slow, barely audible at first, then growing louder. When I turned around, she would be there, the woman from the road, her pale dress fluttering in a wind I couldn't feel. Her head tilted slightly, eyes dark pools that seemed to swallow light. She never spoke in the dream. She just raised her arm, pointing into the distance, toward a place I could never quite see before I woke up gasping. After the third night of these dreams, I decided to go back. I told myself it was curiosity, but deep down I knew it was something else. A pull, like the road was waiting for me. I drove out to Highway 47 just after midnight. No traffic, no sound except the faint buzz of insects in the summer dark. I drove slow, scanning the shoulder for that same pale figure. My heart beat harder with every mile, both hoping and fearing I'd see her again. And then, I did. She was standing in the exact same spot as before, like she had been there all along, just waiting for me to come back. Her dress swayed slightly, though the air was still. I slowed, rolled the window down. This time, she didn't wait for me to ask. She opened the passenger door and slid inside without a word. I swallowed. Where to? Her eyes flicked toward me, just for a second. Then she whispered, "You know." I didn't know. But my hands turned the wheel, and the car moved forward as though they had their own memory. The road bent in ways I didn't remember, the trees crowding closer, their branches overhead forming an unbroken ceiling of black. It was darker than before. My headlights seemed weaker, barely touching the road ahead. When the house appeared, it wasn't the sagging ruin I remembered. It was whole. The paint gleamed fresh, the porch straight and strong. Warm light spilled from the windows, and I could hear faint music, an old record playing something slow and romantic. She turned to me and smiled, the first expression I had seen from her. "Come inside." I don't know why I listened. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to drive away, but I opened the door, stepped out, and followed her up the steps. The air inside was warm and smelled faintly of roses. The furniture was old but polished. A fire crackled in the hearth, and people were there, laughing softly, talking, dancing. Men in dark suits, women in elegant dresses, all frozen in a time decades before my birth. No one looked at me. No one acknowledged my presence, except her. She led me through the crowd toward a narrow hallway at the back of the house. The music grew muffled, replaced by the creak of floorboards under M.
I sat there in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The red on the shore looked fresh. Too fresh. I didn't need to touch it to know what it was. I should have driven away, thrown it out the window and never looked back. But I didn't. Something about her words, "He never paid for what he did," dug into my mind like a splinter. I needed to know. The next morning, I drove into the nearest town. It wasn't much, just a single main street lined with brick buildings, a diner, a hardware store, and a faded awning that read, Merrick County Historical Society. Inside, an older woman sat behind a cluttered desk, peering over reading glasses at a stack of yellowed papers. She looked up when the door creaked shut behind me. "Help you?" I told her I was researching an old local story, a woman killed decades ago on Highway 47. As soon as I mentioned the road, her expression stiffened. "That road's cursed," she said flatly. "Always has been." When I pressed, she sighed and pushed herself up from the desk. She led me to a back room filled with tall filing cabinets and rows of shelves stacked with dusty binders. After a few minutes of searching, she slid a manila folder across the table toward me. The label read, Evelyn Grace Hart, 1965. The photographs inside were black and white, but that didn't make them any easier to look at. One showed a young woman lying in a ditch, her pale dress twisted, her hair spread out around her face. The image was grainy, but I recognized her instantly. Evelyn. The report said she'd been walking home from a community dance when she was struck by a car. No witnesses, no suspect. Official cause of death, blunt force trauma. The case had been closed within a week. But there was another document in the file, a handwritten note, unsigned, dated 3 months after her death. It claimed Evelyn's death hadn't been an accident at all. The writer accused a man named Charles Laird of hitting her intentionally after an argument, then hiding the body until he could dump it by the roadside. I looked up at the woman from the Historical Society. What happened to him? She hesitated, then shrugged. Never charged. Died in 92. Heart attack, I think. The air in the room felt heavier. Evelyn had been right. Whoever killed her had never paid. That night I didn't dream about the highway. I dreamed about the house. Only this time I wasn't standing in the hall. I was outside, watching through a rain-streaked window as Evelyn danced slowly with a man in a dark suit. His face was indistinct, blurred like an old photograph left in the sun. But his hands on her shoulders were firm, controlling, and when she tried to turn away, his grip tightened. She looked up directly into my eyes as if she could see me through the glass. Her mouth moved, forming a single word, help. I woke up shaking. The next day I decided to find the house, not the ruin it was now, the real one. I wanted to know if it still stood anywhere outside the hallucination she'd shown me. I drove the length of Highway 47 twice, pulling over at every driveway that disappeared into the trees. Most led to collapsed barns or overgrown clearings. None looked like the place from my dreams. Then, as I was about to give up, I saw it. A long gravel path, choked with weeds, but still intact. I parked at the road and walked in, my boots crunching on the stones. The trees arched overhead like they had before, but the house at the end was worse than I remembered. The porch had caved in, the windows were shattered, and the door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Inside, the air was damp and smelled of rot. Wallpaper peeled in curling sheets. The floor creaked under my weight. And yet, the layout was the same as in my dream. I found the hallway. I found the door. The room beyond was empty. No broken chair, no stain, just dust and silence. I was about to turn back when something caught my eye. A faint glimmer